Aita, am I wrong for telling my friend I have sexual feelings for her? Hello, I am a 20-year-old lesbian with no experience. I apologize in advance, as this post may be rather lengthy because there is much to discuss, and I want to provide a comprehensive account of the situation. This post concerns a falling out between my longtime female friend and me, which has resulted in us no longer being in contact. Before I go into detail, here is some essential background information about both myself and my friend. We have been close friends for 7 years and are the same age. She was my first crush, or dare I say first love, from ages 15 to 17, and she is aware of this. My feelings for her resurfaced recently, but only in a sexual manner this time. I have autism and ongoing mental health challenges. She moved away to attend university in September, so all our conversations have occurred through text since then. My friend has a boyfriend with whom she has been in a relationship since October, and she currently identifies as straight, though this has not always been the case. The lead up to this situation unfolded over several months, so I will do my best to keep it concise and focus on the main points. Let's start from the beginning. My friend initially came out to me as bisexual, but she then began expressing some uncertainty regarding her true identity. We discussed this extensively, as I have experienced a similar journey during my teenage years before realizing I am a lesbian. Her identity shifted from bisexual to possibly a lesbian, then to asexual, then mostly straight, then biromantic and heterosexual, and so on. I supported her during this challenging time, but it left me confused about whether she was genuinely interested in women. During this period, we started to flirt with each other, and our relationship grew increasingly intimate without being physical, as we began discussing personal matters we had never previously addressed. Here are a few examples of our interactions. She remarked, "I don't think I could ever go through life without a woman sitting on my face." She then looked at me with a smirk, and when I inquired why she was smiling, she said she couldn't tell me that. This conversation took place in person just before she left. The following examples were shared over text messages. We were discussing the fact that I have never had a girlfriend, and she suggested, maybe I could help. I asked how she could assist, thinking she might introduce me to a female friend of hers. She then began messaging me in French, and I kept asking her to clarify in English. However, I sensed the flirtatious undertone, so I assumed she meant help in a suggestive way. I translated her French messages, which stated, "I can't help and this makes me sad. I love my boyfriend, he is my light, and I am entirely devoted to him." I reached out to clarify that I did not mean help in that context, although I eventually caught on, which excited me. At this point, almost all our conversations revolved around her intimate life with her boyfriend. She was eager to share any updates and seek advice. I mostly felt okay listening to her since she has always struggled to open up, and I wanted to be a trustworthy friend for her to confide in. She doesn't really have anyone else she feels comfortable discussing these matters with. This brought up a mix of emotions for me, such as jealousy, joy for her excitement, and the desire to be a supportive friend. She asked several times if my comfort was compromised, but I reassured her that it wasn't and encouraged her to share because I wanted to be encouraging, and hearing her stories was quite enjoyable. She disclosed some very intimate information, which I considered to be oversharing. For instance, she mentioned, "I was so wet I soaked through my underwear. He went down on me while I was bleeding, and there was blood all over his face. And does it turn you on when a woman is wet? Would you go down on a woman?" She even sent a picture of her hand to illustrate the girth of his penis, among other things. An in-person meeting took place the day before the fallout. The day prior to our meeting during her university break, she sent me a picture of her ovulation tracker, indicating she was ovulating and feeling feral and horny. I interpreted this as a flirty signal and replied that I was also nearing ovulation and feeling frisky. She then expressed that it was unfortunate she would be away from her boyfriend during the break since she was feeling this way, prompting me to make a joke about us both being sexless. I somewhat hoped her comment implied we should engage in intimacy, although I would not follow through as she has a boyfriend, and that would be unfair to him. On the day of our meetup, I experienced a significant amount of sexual tension between us. We were unable to stop smiling at one another, and she was messaging me, despite sitting directly across from each other, about how she was feeling very horny and wanted to frame your face with my legs. She did not clarify whether this sentiment pertained to her boyfriend or me, but I recall her referring to he at one point. Later, she moved to sit right next to me, scrolling through her camera roll while smirking. I asked her what was making her smile, and I playfully reached for her phone to see. She began laughing and pulled it away, prompting me to lean in closer. I assumed she was attempting to draw me nearer physically. Ultimately, she did show me pictures of herself and her boyfriend, covered in lipstick kisses, which made me feel somewhat jealous and even more confused because I believed she might want me. Throughout the day, there were several instances where I went to the bathroom to freshen up in preparation for possible intimacy, as I thought she might be interested. However, as I previously mentioned, I would not engage in a sexual encounter with her while she has a partner. I have no interest in cheating whatsoever, and I would only consider being intimate with her if her boyfriend expressed that it was permissible, though I find it difficult to believe that would ever be the case, or if they were in an open relationship. The fallout. The day following our meeting, I impulsively sent her a flirty message. I had previously asked if it was acceptable for us to discuss something significant. This is where things took a downward turn. I intended to send a message confessing my sexual feelings for her, as I could no longer continue in a state of confusion. The exact message was, "I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable, but I really feel like I need to be honest for the sake of our friendship. I don't know how to communicate this politely, so here it is. I can't stop feeling really turned on around you, and I keep thinking about going down on you. I genuinely apologize for saying this, but I don't know how to manage these feelings. I sense a flirty vibe between us, which only intensifies my attraction. I know you may deny this, but you can be quite flirty with me, which confuses me given your assertion of being straight and having a boyfriend. Nonetheless, I wanted to create a safe space for you to share personal matters because I know that's valuable for you. Again, I apologize. Please respond to this honestly since I have been candid. Have you ever thought about me in a sexual way?" The response was overwhelmingly negative. She conceded to flirting but claimed it was all meant as a joke. She expressed a need for space to reflect, which I respected. As I tend to be quite anxious, about a week later, I inquired about how she was doing and if she wished to talk, but she did not respond, knowing how nervous I felt. She eventually replied a day or so later with the message, "After having a long time to think, I don't believe we can continue our friendship. I cannot guarantee that you won't view me in an intimate light, which makes me uncomfortable and disrespects both myself and my relationship. I cannot be certain how my jokes will be interpreted. We have discussed my disinterest and my sexuality, which you have disregarded. I don't perceive you as a terrible person, and I recognize you are facing challenges in other areas. If you truly need someone to discuss things with, you can reach out to me." The aftermath. This situation has left me feeling depressed and profoundly guilty and ashamed for weeks. I have confided in many people, all of whom have assured me that I haven't done anything wrong and that she misled me. I loathe knowing that I made her uncomfortable to the extent that she no longer wants to be friends. I struggle to let go of this and find it difficult to move forward with my life. Hurting her was never my intention. I merely wanted to express my honest feelings, believing it would be acceptable since she had shared intimate thoughts with me too. I can't sleep at night, and I am concerned that people believe I am a despicable person who objectifies women. This is far from the truth, and she knows it. I care deeply for women in every way, not just sexually. I find women, particularly my friend, to be remarkable, and I love spending time with them. Please share your thoughts. I need to know if what I expressed is unacceptable, so I can avoid making similar mistakes in the future, and so as not to make another person feel uncomfortable. I have good intentions and genuinely aspire to be a good person. Thank you for your patience. I truly appreciate any responses I receive. Story 2. I-21F. Can't figure out recurring problems with my boyfriend, 25M. I am a 21-year-old female who has continuous relationship issues with my boyfriend, who is 25 years old. We have been in a relationship for nearly 3 years and have spent most of that time living together. About the conflict, regardless of the current status of our relationship, where we are living, how much time we spend together, or other factors, we consistently engage in the same recurring argument. The repetitive aspect lies not in the subject matter of the dispute, but in the manner in which it unfolds. Generally, What begins as a trivial disagreement escalates to a point where my partner chooses to ignore me completely for several days. I always lean toward open communication to resolve issues immediately, attempting to clarify my feelings and striving to understand his perspective on the matter. While I recognize this may frustrate him, I consider it a natural response on my part. Conversely, my partner tends to avoid confronting conflicts. He typically attempts to detach from the stressor, keeps himself occupied, and tries to evade the problem entirely. As a result, it becomes exceedingly difficult to discuss emotions with him, and he disregards my attempts to engage in dialogue about the disagreement. This pattern often culminates in a scenario where he retreats to sleep, instructing me to leave him alone, while I am left to brood until I feel as though I might explode. He will not make eye contact with me or engage in conversation, often scrolling through his phone while I am speaking or leaving the room mid-sentence. After a few days, he acts as if nothing transpired, returning to his usual self as if life simply continues without incident. Disclaimer: I am fully aware that this dynamic involves both of us, and I take complete responsibility for any hurtful remarks or actions I have directed toward him in the past. I do not wish to paint myself as the good one or him as the bad one. I genuinely want to break this cycle. Outside of this conflict, I believe our connection is authentic and strong, and I appreciate having him in my life. What I have attempted to do in the past 3 years to improve our situation: I have examined my attachment issues anxious, and am actively working to manage my anxious responses. I participated in a mini course on conflict management with my partner, and am striving to adopt healthy conflict resolution strategies, using I statements, responding rather than reacting, maintaining a calm tone, and practicing active listening. I am also addressing my anger management challenges through gratitude journaling, mindfulness exercises, and meditation. I regularly consult my therapist. I have engaged in shadow work to identify my triggers to prevent becoming reactive and to respond in healthier, more constructive ways. I have worked on my need for control, completely abandoning the association of safety with controlling my environment and instead focusing on managing my own behaviors. I have attempted to communicate with him about these issues, articulating how these conflicts affect me and expressing my preference for different dynamics. I self-reflect after every conflict and consistently offer sincere apologies, taking accountability for my actions, acknowledging when my responses or behaviors are unacceptable, validating his feelings about the situation, apologizing, and explaining how I will adjust my behavior in the future to avoid repeating mistakes. I actively appreciate our differences, consciously making an effort to avoid saying anything that might communicate a desire to change him or dictate how he should behave. I am trying to learn more about him, understanding how he operates, his triggers, and supporting him on his journey, aiming to be a safe space for him. What I admit to having done in the past 3 years that has worsened the situation. I used to yell at him when I was frustrated. I would say degrading things when he angered me, such as calling him stupid or incapable. I expressed my anger physically, for instance, by slamming doors, throwing objects instead of gently placing them down, or yanking his phone from his hand when he ignored me during our conversations. Why I truly need advice. I feel that I have made every possible change I could, conducted my research, put in the necessary work, and strive to improve myself daily. Meanwhile, he appears to be making minimal progress, and my patience is waning as it seems he is avoiding addressing this issue. We have had discussions about this problem every time it arises, which totals 35 occasions. He consistently promises to change, yet nothing fundamentally changes. I have clearly articulated how deeply it hurts when he completely ignores me, and he appears empathetic when we discuss it, but ultimately neglects my feelings afterward. I have communicated that the stress stemming from this uncertainty adversely affects my physical health. I experience nausea when a significant argument occurs, which he seems to comprehend, yet continues to overlook. I have made it clear that I do not desire for him to change as a person. Instead, I wish for him to alter how he treats me and behaves during specific situations. I consistently assure him that his feelings are legitimate. These incidents frequently occur when he makes a mistake that hurts or frustrates me. I respond based on my feelings, and then he becomes upset with me for my reaction. Thus, despite being the one initially hurt, I end up being punished and ignored for days. He does not apologize. I often find myself being the first and sometimes the only one to apologize, even when the original fault lay with him. He claims he wants to change, but expresses feeling incapable of doing so. Conversely, I perceive it as a lack of willingness and believe that he repeatedly chooses to prioritize holding grudges over recognizing how dreadful I feel for days as a result. I have suggested numerous alternatives he could explore to replace his current behavior. I requested that he not turn away when going to sleep or allow me to hold his pinky if nothing else. I asked him to consider saying something like, "I am really angry right now, but we will talk about this tomorrow," or "I need some time and space for myself, please respect that." I encouraged him that if he finds it challenging to articulate these thoughts while frustrated, he should at least acknowledge my feelings and apologize after calming down, as he should understand by now how this impacts me. He does not follow through on any of these suggestions. I communicated that I do not expect him to have a complete conversation immediately. I just want him to engage with me. I reassured him that I would respect his boundaries, but ignoring me or instructing me to be quiet and leave him alone is not the same as setting boundaries. It is dismissive and exacerbates the situation. As he does not use any phrases to promote a healthier interaction, I try to ask if he requires time and space. I respect that need, refrain from reaching out, and allow him to decide when he feels ready to reconnect, which ultimately results in him continuing to ignore me. I genuinely need advice, new insights, or a different perspective. I love him deeply and trust him immensely. 90% of the time, I feel comfortable and joyful in this relationship. However, I am growing increasingly weary of his behavior, and my patience is thinning. The last time he did not speak to me for 4 days, I issued him an ultimatum regarding his behavior and expressed my expectation for him to actively demonstrate personal growth rather than merely making empty promises. As I have observed some improvement in him, I am not primarily inclined to end the relationship. However, I feel uncertain about what further actions I can take to improve this dysfunctional dynamic. I do not believe I should fear expressing my feelings out of concern that he might shut down. I do not think it is acceptable for him to make me feel like a hassle or a burden. I do not believe it is acceptable for our relationship to feel fine as long as it is convenient for him, only to have me ignored when genuine effort is required. I do not find it acceptable that someone who claims to love me, and demonstrates it through his actions, can so quickly switch personalities over a minor disagreement and then punish me for an extended period. I do not think it is fair that when he finally sets aside his grudge, he presents himself as the victim while failing to validate my emotions. While I understand the psychological mechanisms behind his behavior, I do not think that understanding and accepting him as he is should equate to ignoring the need for change regarding this toxic cycle. I certainly do not believe it is an unreasonable request for him to mature emotionally, grow as a person, and modify maladaptive behaviors gradually. So, if anyone has read this thoroughly, what should I do? Story 3. Should I just suck it up and apologize? Even though that is the title, this is more like a vent than an actual request for advice. I decided to share here because I feel terrible, and I don't want to burden my friends with this entire situation again. I am a 16-year-old female. On Wednesday, I woke up to a peculiar text, to say the least. I usually rise around 5 a.m., and before getting ready for school, I take a moment to scroll through my phone, checking for messages and notifications that I may have missed while sleeping. About 2 days ago, I awoke to 2 messages on Instagram that read, and I quote, "I'm going to rape you, and at least I don't live in poverty." Both messages were sent by the younger brother of a friend with whom I had never really interacted. I took screenshots of the texts and sent them to my friend. They agreed that his behavior was inappropriate and stated they would speak to him. I appreciated that, but prior to this, my only interaction with him involved him messaging me that he liked me and sending me rather cheesy reels, to which I never responded. I promptly informed my friend about this because I found it strange. They reassured me that he was just messing with me and to ignore it, so I did. The last interaction I recall was him replying to one of my Instagram stories raising awareness about my country's dire current situation, which is likely where the poverty comment originated, making very insensitive jokes. Once again, I ignored him and continued deleting our conversation. I didn't discuss that with my friend, thinking they would just advise me to disregard it. But once I received those messages out of the blue a couple of days ago, I felt shaken and uncertain about how to respond or how to feel. I also felt a bit threatened because I didn't know anything about this guy other than that he was my friend's younger brother. Since this was weighing on me, I confided in a few other friends and sought their counsel. I believe this is a typical reaction, but now I am unsure. Some of them suggested I report it to the deans and inform a teacher. I doubted it would lead to anything since my friend attends a different school, and logically, their siblings would also. Not to mention, I didn't know the guy's age, I only knew he was younger than my friend. Still, I was told they could forward the complaint to his school and various other actions, but they emphasized that they couldn't do much since it was outside of school hours and he wasn't a student at my school. However, they called my parents, explained the situation, and informed us that we could press charges if we chose to, as it constituted harassment. After everything had been addressed, I returned to rehearsal. I am involved in my school play, which requires everyday practice after school, and tried my best not to let it affect me. My mother picked me up afterward as usual, and once we got home, we spoke with my father. We ultimately decided that we would indeed press charges and go to the police the following day after rehearsal. I texted my friend all of this to keep them in the loop, feeling bad that the situation had escalated to a point where their family would become involved with law enforcement due to their brother threatening to rape a girl. Let's be honest, even if he claimed it was just a joke. What kind of joke is that, especially towards someone you barely know? I just felt guilty, especially because my parents would now perceive my friend and their family differently. We had plans for me to visit their house, but that was clearly off now. I thought my friend was on my side because they had initially acknowledged that their brother's behavior was troubling. However, the next message I received from them was a lengthy text that essentially excused their brother's actions. I will attempt to paraphrase. I understand that my brother initiated this whole thing, but it was you who escalated it to this level. He is only 12 years old. He is immature and doesn't understand his actions. I understand you telling your parents, but why tell your friends? You could say you went to them for support, but I suspect you told them to have something new to share. My brother is a troublemaker with bad influences, and they all impact each other. My father is very strict with him and does his best to correct his behavior, but he is just young and immature. This is all very excessive. So, yeah, the guy is 12 years old. Now, I don't know about others, but at 12, I was not involved in such behavior, nor were any of my male friends who were also disgusted by this kid's actions. After reading that message, I began to reevaluate everything. Was I overreacting? The kid is 12. Is this really acceptable? I mean, it was just a text, right? Did I make a mistake by informing my friends? Is my friend suggesting that I am seeking attention? I felt increasingly conflicted. I showed that message to some other friends, and they said that the friend who sent it was enabling bad behavior. They argued that the boy's age was irrelevant and that he needed to be held accountable. Otherwise, he would never change, and I agreed with that viewpoint. They encouraged me to distance myself from that friend because they weren't truly supportive. When I returned home from rehearsal, I discussed the situation with my parents, and we ultimately decided against pressing charges, considering the complication of the situation, especially regarding immigration matters here in the United States. I ended up blocking my friend with a heavy heart and deleted our conversation for my mental well-being. However, I am no longer certain about that decision. This friend was the first person I truly connected with in high school. I started nearly alone, and we became quite close very quickly. They have seen me cry over unrelated issues concerning my parents and introduced me to one of my greatest interests. They made our classes together much more enjoyable and were even my platonic Valentine in 2024, as both of us identify as aromantic asexual. I felt like their surrogate child, and they have always been nurturing. They never treated me this way before. My parents have moved on, but it has been a full day since I blocked them, and we used to message each other almost daily, sharing memes and other content. My phone feels barren now, and I have been feeling down all day. My friends assure me that I did nothing wrong in entirely cutting ties with my friend, but it hurts. I feel empty and am very close to giving in and trying to reconcile, even though I don't believe I did anything wrong, in hopes of returning to the way things were before 2 days ago. I have always been a pacifist and excessively eager to please people, something this friend often teased me about. I am unaccustomed to standing up for myself, and even though I have faced wrongs in the past, I would typically let them go and maintain my friendships. I want to do that again now. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help but feel sad. What also distresses me is that this young man will face no repercussions for his actions, all while I am grieving the loss of such a dear friend and a significant part of my life. Thalia, if you read this, I hope you can grasp my perspective.